Hey everyone, glad to see y'all back here for another night of terrifying tales to be told to you all tonight. I'm extremely thankful for all the support everyone is showing for the podcast. It really means a lot to me. If you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and share with all your friends, family, plants, pets, and all others you believe would enjoy this podcast. Alright, one little bit of an update that you may all have noticed. The podcast is now on Apple Podcasts, and it has an official name. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spooky Salutations with your host, Weddle Blade Cruz. Now, that's enough of the boring housekeeping. Let's get right into the real reason you're all here, shall we? Now, I did promise you guys that I would read some of Edgar Allan Poe's works at the beginning of this episode. I will not read the whole thing, but I'll read part of it, and perhaps in the next episode, I'll read even more. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more." Distinctly, I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, and the silk and sad uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating, then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortals ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard the tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then where thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he. but with mine of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pius, just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. And I think that's what I'm gonna call it for now. It's a pretty long poem, but hey, if you guys want to hear more, maybe I'll read more in the next episode. But if you don't, then I guess never more. Now let's get to the episode, shall we? Later, guys. Are you the devil? From Hey2394 on Reddit. This happened to me and my cousin when we were little kids one summer. That summer, we were obsessed with using our walkie-talkies. We would pretend we were spies or try and prank our other cousins, or sometimes hear into other frequencies and phone calls. Apparently this was easier back then, as this was in the early 2000s. One time, however, a man, sounded about 40-something, started speaking to us. Clear as day, no static. What was weird to us, however, was not that we heard the voice, this happened frequently, but that it was interacting with us. Immediately, me and my cousin looked at each other confused. I can't even remember what he was saying to us, but I remember that for whatever reason, I asked it, "Are you the devil?" There was a short pause, and clear as day, again, almost no static at all. The voice said, "Yes." We immediately turned off our walkie-talkies and never used them again. A few things. Before you say maybe one of your other cousins pranked us, none of our other cousins were male, and my uncle was out working that day. The other thing is that my cousin in the room with me had the other walkie-talkie, and as far as I knew, there was only one pair of them around the house. Probably one of the scariest things that happened to me as a kid, and even if someone pranked us, I'm still trying to figure out how they did it, because I'm 99% sure it wasn't coming from inside the house. End of the first story. You see, here's the thing. I've used walkie-talkies in many of the professions that I've had over the years. I have worked security for Great America. I have worked security for Levi Stadium, where I had to use an earpiece and a walkie. I even worked security for the Giants parade when they won the World Series a while back. Now, here's the thing. I even used walkie-talkies, I think maybe once or twice when I was in the military. Not once have any of those been crystal clear or without static. That's what freaks me out the most about your story. I looked up and I thought I saw a face in the window, and that scared me a little bit. So yeah, I don't know how that would be possible if it is a prank. And if you had the only pair of walkie-talkies in the entire house, then I don't know what to tell you. That is absolutely terrifying. If you have any other stories and you want to share them, feel free. That was insane. That was pretty cool for our first story. Now, let's move on to our second story, shall we? Grandma Still Protects Me. From Anonymous on Reddit. When I was 17, 26 now, we were burgled in broad daylight while I was at home. The robbers were armed and violent. However, nothing about that day makes any sense at all, because I've been trying to work it out for the past 9 years, and the only conclusion I can draw is my dead grandma was keeping me safe. Some context. Around that time in my life, I was struggling with a lot of insomnia to the point where I needed sleeping pills to ever be able to sleep. I hadn't slept without them in about 2 years. That particular day, I arrived home from school around 4 p.m. Went into my bedroom. My bedroom was on the ground floor at the back of the house. You had to fully walk into the kitchen to even notice my bedroom door. I sat on the bed and suddenly was overcome with this deep tiredness like nothing I'd experienced in a long time. I put my head down and fell into the deepest nap I think I've ever had, with no help from sleeping pills or anything like that. Whilst I was napping, I had a very vivid dream about my grandma who had died 2 years prior. In the dream, she was in the room with me. Her presence was so strong, I could almost reach out to her. Suddenly, my phone went off and woke me up. It was my auntie who had just come home to find the front door battered open, and the upstairs of the house and the downstairs living room and hallway had been totally turned upside down. She called as she assumed I wasn't home and she hadn't checked my bedroom. I was super disoriented when she called me. I thought I had been asleep for hours and hours. I felt almost drunk. I was that disoriented. When I finally realized what had happened, it was only 4:20, which means somehow in the space of 20 minutes, I managed to come home, fall into the deepest sleep of my life, and somehow not hear a single thing while the house got totally ransacked. They must have left in a hurry because they didn't check the kitchen. If they had, they would have immediately noticed my room. The next door neighbors then came over and told us they'd heard banging and crashing around. Nobody could understand how I'd been there and not woken up. It didn't and still doesn't make sense. I've always been a super light sleeper. And even if somebody tiptoes into my room, I'll immediately sense it and wake up. Unfortunately, this meant that everybody was slightly suspicious of me for a while, as it made no sense at all. But I swear to God, no matter how many times I play it over in my head, the only conclusion I can draw is that my grandma was protecting me. The burglars were later found, and it turned out they were wanted for a series of violent robberies. They had been armed with weapons and everything. When I found that out, my stomach turned. I truly believe that my deceased grandma saved my life that day. End of story 2. I truly believe your grandmother protected you that afternoon, and a grandmother's love goes a long way. I know that from experience. My grandmother was an amazing woman, and I can feel her presence many times. And I feel like she is watching over me and my family, because that's the kind of woman she was when she was alive. So I'm sure your grandmother was protecting you as well. She was keeping you in there, keeping you calm, keeping you asleep, and making sure that you're safe, because she loved you, and she still loves you, even after death. Thank you for sharing your story, and I'm glad you're okay, and there was no harm done to you. Okay. Hey, how's it going? Do you have your ticket yet? Come on, we're gonna be late and there won't be any seats left. What do you mean, where are we going? We're going to the graveyard, of course, to listen to Graveyard Tales, the spookiest podcast around that'll not only have you laughing with their dad jokes and old school references, but they'll also fill your mind with all kinds of historical paranormal knowledge. Honestly, it's like listening to a college lecture I actually care about and want to stay awake for. The hosts, Adam and Matt, keep things interesting by staying engaged and not taking anything too seriously by making jokes whenever there's an opportunity. I mean, what do you expect when you get two really good friends sitting around and talking about a subject they both love? my favorite episodes. Well, for one, their end of the year tradition of reading listener stories is always a blast. Not to mention the episode where they discussed atmospheric beasts, because I learned a lot of theories and information that I never knew before. My next favorite has got to be their episode on Alcatraz, because of how close I am to it, and it inspired me to one day go investigate. Oh look, the show's about to start. Let's go take our seats in the graveyard and get ready to enjoy the show. Graveyard Tales. New episodes premiere every Friday, and you can find them on all your favorite podcast listening apps and sites. You can further support them by subscribing to them on Patreon for bonus content like ad-free video and audio episodes as well. I'm gonna go take a seat and listen. See you soon. Let's go to the third story, shall we? Ouija Mistake from Gen KXO096 on Reddit. So, I don't tell this story because the thought of it makes me uneasy. It's something I don't tell people. Not even my fiance knows. He wouldn't believe me. But I thought I'd share it here. So here I go. So my friend and I wanted to make a Ouija board and try to communicate with the dead. I think we were 13 or 14 at the time. We made one out of a piece of paper, and we used a guitar pick as the thingy that moves. For those of you who don't know, that's called a planchette. Sorry, I don't remember the name of it at the moment. But anyways, we were playing with the homemade Ouija board in my bedroom, because if my parents knew, they would kill me. We asked our typical questions and it didn't move. Then it started moving, and honestly, I thought my friend was just moving it. I'm pretty sure she was. We each had a finger on it. We decided to give up and go for a walk and play at the creek down the street. I realize now that I'm older, we never said goodbye. We left the guitar pick in the middle of the board, and when I came back, it was on yes. I really didn't think anything of it. I was an ignorant child that didn't know what I was really messing with. This is the part that's hard to talk about. So that night, I laid down to go to sleep, and I started to feel uncomfortable. So I got up and opened my bedroom door. Then I laid back down, and after a while I fell asleep. Suddenly my bedroom door slams shut. I nearly crapped myself. I quickly stood up and ran to the door and opened it. I was shaking and about to cry. My parents yelled at me for slamming the door, so I piled a bunch of stuff in front of the door to prevent it from slamming again. Afterwards, I laid back down in my bed and eventually fell asleep again. I woke up sweating and heart racing, and I felt nothing but pure fear. Then I got a feeling there's something at the end of my bed. All of a sudden, I saw footsteps, imprints in my mattress coming towards me. I screamed and jumped out of bed and ran downstairs and told my father what I did and what happened. He took a Bible, went upstairs, and read some verses and blessed my room. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept my bedroom light on. My father was pissed, but he didn't tell my mother. We haven't spoken about it since. I'm not a huge believer in God, but I know whatever was in my room was evil, and I will never touch a Ouija board ever again. I have learned a lot about them since then. They're not something to mess with, especially if you don't know how to properly use them. I was a stupid child, but I guess it's an interesting story for others. And hey, I also have comforting spirit stories as well. End of the third story. Okay. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't mess with Ouija boards. Like, at all. I've not once ever touched one. I've never even seen anybody ever use one. I've never been in the vicinity of one. Would I ever use one? Absolutely not. Why? It terrifies me. It does. Because obviously there's the fact that you can open a spiritual doorway, and if you do not properly close it, then something can come in and it'll stay there. And regardless of even if you do properly close it, something could have already have come in and not left. There's also the rumor of the Ouija board demon known as Zozo. There's a chance you could encounter him. And from a lot of things that people have said is he's particularly dangerous. I'm not 100% sure if he is a real demon or not, but many believe that he is. And a lot of the times, belief is what gives these creatures power. I'm glad it wasn't worse for you. And I would enjoy reading some of those comforting spirit stories as well. Of course, I don't know if the audience would, because they like the scary, spooky, dangerous kind of spooky stories. I don't know why I just did that. Anyways, I'm sure people would love to hear them. So, if you feel like sharing, share away. And I'll happily read it on here. Now, let's move on to the fourth story, shall we? Shadow Under the Bridge, from Anonymous on Reddit. This happened in 2017. I was hanging out under a bridge with my friends when I was in high school. I swear to God, I just saw something out of the corner of my eye. What the f*** going on? I'm starting to scare myself. I don't know what is going on. I just saw something out of the corner of my eye. This happened in 2017. I was hanging out under a bridge with my friends when I was in high school. It was near my house, and it had really cool graffiti. So we used to go there and take pics and just hang out. Once we decided to go at night. We were sitting on the far left of the ledge, and we were just talking about random things. And to the far right, I saw the shadow figure of a man. He was sitting on the edge of the ledge, just hanging out. I thought I was tripping, so I kept looking away. But every time I looked back, he was still there. I was convinced still that it was my mind playing tricks on me. Later in the conversation, we started talking about paranormal. And my friend mentioned how this place was really creepy at night. I then mentioned how I thought I kept seeing this figure over there. She was like, "Bro, I see it too." I was convinced she was playing with me, so I didn't believe her. But she insisted she saw it too, and thought she was tripping. I was like, "I'm good, I'm out." I started walking by myself and praying. She was with her boyfriend, and they had an electric scooter that they were going to ride on. So I was like, let me get a head start, because there's no way I was going to wait for them. I went home, and I never went back there at night. Anyways, this is a story that I laugh at today. I'm no longer afraid of these types of things because I know how to protect myself against them religiously. But I thought it would be fun to share. End of story 4. Shadow people. You know, that's a long history of shadow people. There is. Yeah, you see, I will never hang out under a bridge at night. You know, I say that, but then again, I'm also planning on starting paranormal investigations, and a lot of paranormal locations are bridges. So yeah, somebody just, be like, hey, you remember when you said you'd never hang under a bridge at night? Here you are. That's creepy. That's just, honestly, that's like super creepy. But yeah, I mean, hey, I'm glad you know how to protect yourself now. All right. And now for our final story. New Orleans Terror from umpathy@gmail.com on Reddit. This story may be hard to believe, especially since I don't have the photo at hand, but I promise I'm telling you the truth. When I was a kid, I went on a church service trip to New Orleans. Our aim was to help clean up remaining damages from when Katrina hit. About midway into the trip, we helped remove brush and debris from some plot of land so a playground could be built. We were all ecstatic because the day was incredibly productive, and we really believed that the spiritual forces of good and godliness were at work through us. That night we visited Bourbon Street to have dinner, listen to some live music, and celebrate the work that had been done. At some point, one of the church leaders was taking pictures and pointed her camera to the sky, facing a distant casino. The sky was clear, no clouds. She snapped a photo, and when the screen displayed her photo, there was a silver-looking face smiling heinously while clasping his hands, protecting the casino. His face seemed metallic with many wrinkles. If you can imagine the Heath Ledger Joker, but without eyes and a huge mouth, no teeth, and many wrinkles, like fabric being pulled in multiple directions, that's what it looked like. It had wet-looking orange hair that draped about midway down its face. Its nose was half missing. The entire group went hysterical when they looked at the photo, and the rest of the night, we were disturbed. The joy we had felt all day instantly went away. Few of us slept. I had a variety of hallucinations in the dark of demons falling into me. I didn't get any sleep. There were a few girls in the room next to me who I could hear crying in terror about what had taken place. I say all this to illustrate how the incident felt like a direct, successful attempt to hijack our spirits of positive energy. One person in the group tried to come up with multiple natural explanations for the incident, but the leader who took the photo always had new details to explain how there wasn't a natural explanation for what had taken place. This incident alone has been enough to keep my agnostic but alert and aware of all possibilities. End of the final story. Yeah, New Orleans is another place I would love to visit, but I don't think I would ever take any pictures there because I'm scared of the things that I would see there. I am terrified of the things that I would see looking back at me at whatever pictures I took. Oh boy, that is absolutely horrifying. I mean, there's obviously, everyone knows New Orleans. Everyone knows the rumors. Everyone knows that it's like the spiritual hub of the USA, and voodoo and the bayou and hoodoo. I hope that's not a mean term. I just, thinking about Dead Island and the song, hoodoo the voodoo. Anyways, well, hey, that's just life. Alright. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and to the audio listeners, it would be amazing if you would leave a 5-star review, because that'll help this podcast be pushed out to more people, and that'll bring more people into our little zone here, our little scary zone of spookiness. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining me, and thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spooky Salutations. I'll see you guys in the next one. And remember, fear keeps us alive. Bye, everyone.